Hey guys, so welcome to today's video. Guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to make your fragrances last and not go bad. And we're not talking about last on your skin. We're talking about the fragrances lasting in general, the fragrance bottle. Whether or not fragrances go bad, when they go bad, why they go bad, how to know if they go bad. We're going to talk about all that today. So if you're interested in learning the shelf life, the true shelf life of fragrances, then just continue to watch. Guys, before we get started with the video, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure that red subscribe button turns gray. Tap that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. Thumbs up the video so I know you love my content. And finally, leave me a comment below so we can get to know each other. Now, let's get started with the video. Okay, guys, I didn't want to do this video, but I felt like it was needed. It was needed because a lot of you guys kept asking me on Instagram and here on YouTube about fragrances going bad, how long my fragrances last, particularly my fragrances. Like you guys, a lot of you guys seem to be very concerned with your girls' fragrances. So we're going to talk about my fragrances. We're going to talk about fragrances in general, everything, okay? So the first thing is, do fragrances go bad? Yes, they do. Will fragrances expire? As anything else in life, yes, fragrances will eventually expire. We will eventually expire, okay? So yes, your fragrances will expire. Now, the thing about it is to try to preserve the shelf life of your fragrance for as long as humanly, physically possible, okay? That is the name of the game. That is what we try to do. So typically your fragrances are going to last about 3 to 5 years, okay? 3 to 5 years for a normal shelf life of most fragrances. Now, citrus fragrances can go bad faster than fragrances with your woody notes and your ouds and your patchoulis and those type of heavy, deep base note fragrances. But the top notes will eventually fade sometimes, especially with bad care of fragrances. So like I said, 3 to 5 years is standard with your fragrances. Guys, there's fragrances that are like 10 years old. People buy and sell vintage fragrances that are 10, 15, even 20 years old. So fragrances can last with the proper care. Now, how should you not store your fragrances? Let's talk about that. You should not store your fragrances in direct sunlight or just direct light, period. That can ruin the composition of your fragrances. Do not store your fragrances in the bathroom because it's not in a temperature controlled environment, and humidity is like literally the fragrance's enemy. Humidity, sunlight, oxygen is not your fragrance's friends, okay? So do not store your fragrances in the bathroom. It's best to store your fragrances in a cool, dark, and dry place. I store my fragrances in my closet, in my beauty room, whatever you want to call it. There's no light in here. There's no windows in this room. There's no direct sunlight coming in this room. The only light that's in this room is when I'm filming or when I'm getting dressed, and that's just regular light. I'm in here for a time, and then the light's off, the door's closed, and that's it, okay? Now, you can store your fragrances in a drawer. A lot of people store their fragrances in a drawer or in a small closet. Now, for me, I want to see my bottles. I want to have the best of both worlds. I want to be able to see my bottles on display and also be able to protect them and keep them from sunlight, you know, heat, extreme temperature conditions. So I like to display my fragrances. A lot of people keep their fragrances in a drawer. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually going to preserve your fragrances longer. There's some people that will tell you that they keep their fragrances in boxes. For me, I'm not doing that either because, like I said, it's all a part of the fragrance experience for me. It's not just spraying on the fragrance and walking out the door. Like, I could never keep my fragrances hidden like in a drawer. That just would not work for me. Looking at the beautiful bottles is all a part of the fragrance experience for me. Some people don't care about stuff like that. They rather their fragrances last super long, you know, maybe 10 years than to display them. For me, I'm actually wearing my fragrances. So here's what I do. I have an inventory, like I don't have anything written down, but I do have a mental inventory in my mind, like which years I've purchased certain fragrances. So for me, but a lot of my fragrances that were purchased in 2020, I'm keeping a mental note of that so that I know that within 2022 and early parts of 2023, those fragrances need to be worn because maybe by the 2023 mark, they'll start to possibly go bad. Now, a lot of these fragrances will make it to 2023 because I wear my fragrances. Like I told you guys, I wear my fragrances in the morning when I take a shower, or my fragrances at night, like going to bed. I wear my fragrances. I don't just wait for special occasions to wear fragrances. It doesn't matter if it's the most high-end exclusive fragrance. If I feel like wearing it to bed, I'm wearing it to bed. If I feel like wearing it to the grocery store, I'm wearing it to the grocery store, because I just love smelling good all the time and wearing fragrances. Another place you don't want to keep your fragrances is on the windowsill. I told you guys, if you guys follow my channel and you watch my vlogs, I told you that my introduction to fragrances was my father. He was the frag head. My father had a bunch of fragrances lined up on the windowsill, all lined up in rows, and they were getting the sunlight, they were getting the cold winter. It didn't matter. They were getting all those environments, and my father was still wearing them fragrances, and it was what it was, because at that time, no one really knew about how to store fragrances and what's the proper way to store fragrances, yada yada. But I mean, he wore them all the time, so it's not like they went bad on him. But yeah, don't store your fragrances on the windowsill. Another thing to do or not to do is keep the tops off of your fragrances. I know a lot of discounted websites, and even who's infamous for that, Bond. You can purchase Bond fragrances like for a lesser price with no cap. That is a no-no, because when your fragrances don't have a cap on it, then that's when the air can get in. It'll oxidize, it'll start to evaporate. That's not good, no bueno. Please keep your caps on top of your fragrances. And another thing, guys, let me tell you, take everything that you hear us reviewers say with a grain of salt. And also, when people tell you guys, even in the comment section, oh, that fragrance didn't last on me, or that fragrance was this, that fragrance didn't smell like this, that fragrance was that, take that with a grain of salt, because you guys do not know the conditions that people store their fragrances in. You could have purchased a fragrance in 2015 and that fragrance can still smell good right now and just be perfectly fine if that fragrance was stored properly. Now, you could have purchased a fragrance in November of 2021, and by March of 2022, that fragrance is not smelling the same. That fragrance is going to go bad because of bad storing conditions. So when I talk about fragrances here, and some people say, oh, that fragrance was really weak on me, or this or that, like, I'm just like, okay, you never know how that person was storing their fragrances. They can keep their fragrances in the bathroom. That person might have their fragrances in the midst of direct sunlight. So your fragrance that you keep in a cool, dry, dark place is going to smell different from their fragrance. You know what I mean? So take that with a grain of salt, and be careful and mindful of people that you purchase your fragrances from. I know a lot of you guys purchase decluttered fragrances. Make sure the person that you're purchasing that fragrance from is letting you know how that fragrance was stored. Ask questions. How was this fragrance stored? How long did you have the fragrance? Because a lot of people are buying expired and old fragrances that other people are decluttering. So for me, I would rather either spend the money on the fragrance from the department store, or wait until I get a discounted price, because the store is always having a 15%, 25%, 20%. You can get discounts on fragrances from reputable distributors of the fragrance, rather than having to wait to purchase what someone is decluttering. They probably had that fragrance for 5 years. It could be a new fragrance that's not 5 years old, but how was that fragrance stored? Did it have the cap on it all the time? Was that person shaking the bottle? Was it in, the direct sunlight? Was it in the bathroom? You just never know. And also, when you go to department stores and you're smelling samples, not samples, but you're smelling the floor model, be mindful of that fragrance too, because some of y'all will spray something on your hand and be like, oh, I sprayed that at Neiman Marcus and it didn't last on me. Okay, so here's the thing. Those fragrances that are sitting on the counter that are used for samples, or not samples, but that are used for testers, those fragrances are sitting there in a lot of light in the midst of a department store that's just like light beaming on them from every which way. It may not be sunlight, but it's a lot of light. And that fragrance has, who knows how long that fragrance has been sitting out. Half the time, the cap isn't on that fragrance. The cap is off and on. And if it is on, it's probably been off for a while. You just never know. So please don't judge the performance of a fragrance by a floor sample at a department store, or even a sample, because samples are very old as well. You don't know how they were stored, yada, 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 XYZ. for me, I'm judging just the basis of the scent. You know what I mean? Like, you get like an idea of what the fragrance is gonna smell like. 9 times out of 10, it's not the exact true scent, because like I said, those fragrances that are sitting there on the counter are like literally like under beaming lights. They've been there for a while. They're not switching out testers that often, you know what I mean? So just be mindful of trying to judge the performance of a fragrance by a tester or a sample. Another thing you don't want to do is shake the bottle. Oxygen can get inside the nozzle, like I said to you, and that's just a no-no. You don't want oxygen to get into your bottles. So for me, the smaller bottles are the way to go, because less oxygen can get into that, and those fragrances for me will last longer. Now, I do have a couple of examples to show you of fragrances, like this fragrance right here. This is my Angel. I'm covering it because my first and last name has been engraved on this fragrance, because this fragrance was gifted to me by my father a million years ago. Now, this was refilled some time ago, but guys, because of how I store my fragrances, this smells the exact same. It's not weak at all. And as you can see, the juice is still that very pale blue color. I'm not sure if it's blue or if it's a clear color, but it looks blue because of the bottle. But either way, it hasn't oxidized, and it's the true color of all the Angel fragrances. And this is definitely more than 5 years old. This may be 6 years old, maybe more than 6 years old, but possibly 6, yeah. So I say that to say my juice is still the same color as when I got it refilled, because of how I store my fragrances. Now, this and maybe my YSL Libre and my Kilian, what is it, Love Don't Be Shy. Those fragrances have been, those are my oldest fragrances. I've had Love Don't Be Shy since 2019, and I've also had my Libre in 2019 as well. It's still that beautiful, like golden colored juice. I mean, 2019 isn't a long time, but I'm just saying, you could have fragrances for 6 months and they start to go bad because of a bad storage condition. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, it just depends on how you store your fragrances, especially in these clear glass bottles. Now, a bottle like this one from Initio, this fragrance right here, like this, I still wouldn't suggest putting any fragrance in the bathroom, in direct sunlight, or anything like that. It doesn't matter what the bottle looks like. But a fragrance bottle like this is very, very secure, and it's protecting the fragrance, because this is like a ceramic brushed glass. Guys, this right here, nothing is going through this. Like, no sunlight, no light. But like I said, I still wouldn't suggest putting your fragrances in that type of a condition. Also, another fragrance bottle that has to be commended are the Tiziana Terenzi bottles. No light, nothing is going through this bottle. You can't see the juice, and that's kind of the downside, because you know, you want to see your dents. Like for me, sometimes I like seeing the dents in my fragrances. It's kind of satisfying. It lets you see how much of the fragrance you've used. And even for me sitting here reviewing fragrances for you guys, like you guys can see how much of the fragrance that I actually use. So a bottle like this, I hate the fact that you can't see the juice, but I love the fact that it's just so protected. And the last bottle that I want to show you guys are the Montal bottles. These bottles, you know, I like them now. Like, I love them now. But in the beginning, initially, I was like, I hate that bottle. It's not cute. Like, I don't like it. But I've since been able to appreciate the beauty of this type of bottle. Now, what I don't like about it is that it doesn't have a cap. So you really have to be careful with fragrances like this, because the oxygen can kind of seep in. So, you know, just be careful when you're purchasing fragrances like this, especially the older ones. Like, I know Fragrance Net and Fragrance X or whatever those discounted websites, they sell a lot of these fragrances, and you just never know like how old they are. You don't know the conditions that they were stored in those warehouses. But I love this. This is so good. This is Rose's Musk. But another bottle that is very good, you know, at keeping your fragrances protected, because nothing is going through here. So in a nutshell, this is a very short video, but I just wanted you guys to know that yes, fragrances will go bad, but you can extend the shelf life of the fragrance by how you take care of them. Now, you know, you can go overboard and keep them in boxes, put them in a fridge, put them in a wine fridge, put them in the back of the closet, store them. Like, you could do all that. But for me, like I said, the whole looking and being able to display my bottles is a part of the fragrance experience for me. It's beyond just spraying the fragrance on after I'm taking a shower and walking out the door. It's being able to come into my closet, looking at these beautiful bottles, choosing which fragrance I want to wear, and you know, that just works for me. That won't work for everybody. A lot of people like to keep their fragrances away and do what works for you, but just be mindful that they will go bad. But you know, while they're here, while they're good, enjoy them. Wear your fragrances. It doesn't matter if you don't have a special occasion to go to, because any occasion that you've woken up and you're in your right mind and you have the activity of your limbs, that's a special occasion. Wear that fragrance du bois, wear that House of Sillage, wear that Baccarat Rouge, like wear whatever fragrance you want to wear when you want to wear it, okay? That way you know that even if you have a bunch of fragrances and they will go bad eventually, at least you know you got your wears out of it. You know what I mean? Like for me, I know, I'm very confident to say, and I'm very secure in the fact that I wear my fragrances. So in 2024, if they're going bad or if a couple of them are going bad, okay, because I've gotten my wares out of them. You know what I mean? Like food will expire eventually. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop buying food. You know what I mean? There's times in my fridge where I've purchased certain vegetables or certain fruits and we don't get a chance to eat them, or I didn't get a chance to cook them or whatever, and I have to throw them away. But I mean, it doesn't mean that the next week I'm not buying the same fruits and vegetables again because that's just what we do. That it is what it is. So that is all I have to say about fragrances going bad and whether or not they're going to go bad, and how to store your fragrances to get the most out of your fragrances shelf life. So let's talk about it in the comments below like we always do. Remember guys, to stay safe, be great, stay great, and always strive for greatness. AI the Great signing out, but I'll see you in my next video. Peace.